Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're learning Maseches Kiddushin Daf Lamed Tes. We are in the middle of a sugya about Orla and Kilayim and Chadash. And the Gemara here starts to discuss some of the practical halachic psakim that came out from Rabbanim Chashuvim. And in particular here, we're talking about Orla and Chutz La'aretz. So on Lamed Tes Amud Aleph, 5 lines down, the Gemara says, Amar le Levi l'Shmuel. Levi says to Shmuel, Shmuel's nickname was Aryoch. He says, Safek liva on echol. Create a suffix for me. Whenever we have a suffix orla and chutz la'aretz, he holds its mutter. So he said, basically, he was saying, you pick it, and then I'll just walk up and see that they're there. Create for me a suffix orla, and then I'll be able to eat it. Rav Avyav, Rabba Bar Rav Chanan, also mesafku sfuke lahadade. They also did these funky steps in order to be able to eat orla and chutz la'aretz, because when there's a suffix orla and chutz la'aretz, it's mutter, no problem at all. Amar says, Amar Charife de Pumpadisa, the people who are the Charifim, the sharp, the wise people of Pumpadisa, 8 lines down in Lamed Tes Amud Aleph, they said, Ein orla b'chutz la'aretz. Nothing. There's no orla and chutz la'aretz. Even more mekel. Forget about the suffix. There's no orla and chutz la'aretz at all. Shalcha Rabbi Yehuda Muhammad Rabbi Yochanan. The shaila was asked from Rabbi Yehuda to Rabbi Yochanan in regards to whether or not there's orla in chutz la'aretz. Shalach le Rabbi Yochanan responded, Sasom sveka, you should stop with doing all the suffix stuff. The avad vada, and you should burn all of the orla that's vadai. The hichriz al perose and shetu'un and geniza. There is orla. So now we have a huge split in the Amoraim. We have some Amoraim saying black on white that there's nothing to worry about, the Charife de Pumpadisa, and we have Rav Yochanan who's of the opinion that there really is. And he says, V'chol ha'omer ein orla b'chutz la'aretz lo yehelo nin v'nechet mas'techevel b'gora b'kal Hashem. Wow. Anyone who says that there's no din of orla and chutz la'aretz, they're not, again, are they not part of Klal Yisrael? It sounds pretty bad. The pasuk is a pasuk that's quoted from Sefer Micha, but basically you've let go of the rope of the Jewish people, kind of a deal. Again, very sharp. This requires time. We don't, but let's just at a minimum, let's just say that there's a big machlokas amoraim as to whether or not we have a din of orla in chutz la'aretz. Lamaisa, none of us have any sense of orla and chutz la'aretz whatsoever. None. We also don't live in an agricultural space, so we're kind of not aware. But like the apples that we get, they're genetically modified. I don't even know, like how far removed are we? What happened to GMO? Does that mean, is it no longer what it was? Is there a din of orla? Okay, so there's a big machlokes and chutz la'aretz to start with. So it says the Gemara, "V'inhu kiman savruha." Those who are lenient, who do they hold like? What's the precedence for them in the Tanaim? We know in the Amoraim that there's a shita. We saw on the top of the page that they were a sipek liva on echol. And remember, they were talking to themselves, to each other, and they're like, "Oh, just pluck it for me, and I'll be able to eat it because safek orla and chutz la'aretz is mutter." What are the mar mekomos for them in the Tanaim? So a quarter of the way down, the Gemara says, Ki hadatanya Rabbi Elazar b'Rabbi Yossi Omer mishum Rabbi Yossi ben Dur Maska sha'amar mishum Rabbi Yossi haglili sha'amar mishum Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri sha'amar mishum Rabbi Eliezer hagadol. Lots of people. Ein orla b'chutz la'aretz. So Rabbi Yochanan's throwing these curses out, but you're not going to have a nin or a neched in regards to the Jewish people. You're cut from the rope of the Jewish people. Meanwhile, we have a brisa with the names of 10 greats from the Tanaim who say that there's no such thing as orla and chutz la'aretz. Asks the Gemara below, is that really true that there's no orla and chutz la'aretz? Ve'anan tanan, we have in our Mishnah that we started with on Daf Lamed Zayin. Ve'anan tanan, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, af hachadash. Even chadash, meaning orla and chadash. So that seems to be that there is a din of orla and chutz la'aretz. Says Gemara, tani chadash. Take out the word af. It's not af. No, just chadash, not af. Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rav Yochanan. In relation to? Because our Mishnah was discussing whether or not orla and kilayim applied in chutz la'aretz.
No, understood. I'm saying that af hachadash means that orla would apply in chutz la'aretz. How is
af hachadash means that even because it's our Mishnah on Lamed Zayin. So if we turn back to Lamed Zayin on our Mishnah had this machlokes at the top of the page. Chutz mina orla v'kilayim. There the din was something that's eina tluya ba'aretz. Is no heges bein ba'aretz bein b'chutz la'aretz, and except for orla and kilayim that seemingly do apply. And if you say af, that means orla is also part of the isser. So the Gemara says, don't worry. Our Gemara teaches, it says the word af doesn't belong in our Mishnah. And or a third of the way down on Lamed Testament Aleph, Amar Rabbi Asi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Orla b'chutz la'aretz, halacha l'Moshe mi Sinai. Rabbi Yochanan was of the opinion that Orla and chutz la'aretz, which is fascinating because it's chutz la'aretz, but apparently he holds that there's halacha. It's a very unique space to have a halacha l'Moshe mi Sinai. Not that they have to be rational, but just what?
Yeah, just about chutz la'aretz.
Yeah, it's odd. I mean, of course, Pashut, it applies in Eretz Yisrael. It's just a unique application. Amar le Reb Zer le Rav Asi, wait 1 second. How can you say that we have a halacha l'Moshe mi Sinai about Orla and chutz la'aretz, ve'atanya, or ve'hatnan, more accurately, safek Orla ba'aretz, aser, besuria mutter, ve'chutz la'aretz yord ve'loket. So Eretz Yisrael Pashut is aser, that we know. Surya is a city that's near Eretz Yisrael, but not Eretz Yisrael. It has its own din, a unique status. And then as it relates to Chutz La'aretz, and this time we learn the parentheses, B'chutz La'aretz Yord V'lokate. So how can you say that in Chutz La'aretz there's halacha l'Moshe mi Sinai, black on white? We see over here in this brisa that you're Yord V'lokate. No, there is no Orla in Chutz La'aretz. So says the Gemara, Ishtomim Kishachada, Rav Asi, who had this brisa thrown at him, he stumbled for a bit, he wasn't sure. And then he responded, Amar le, Ema, perhaps I should say Kach Nemar, Sveka Mutter, Vada'a Aser. This is a very unique shita, where the Safek is going to be completely mutter. A Safek or Lan Chutz La'aretz is completely mutter, but the Vada is Aser. It's not Safek like middle of the road and Isser D'Rabbanan. They're polarized. They're very far from one another. The Safek is 100% mutter, like non-Orla food, and the Vadai is 100% Aser, like Eretz Yisrael Orla food. So that's how Rav Asi wanted to answer. Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rav Yochanan, Lokin ala kilayim dvar Torah. There's a din deoraisa that if a person were to violate the Isser of kilayim, they get malchus. Amar le Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yossi, v'ha'anan tanan. How can you say that? HaKilayim midirei sofrim. We have a Mishnah that says that kilayim is a din derabanan. How can you tell me that you get malchus midoraisa for kilayim when we have a brisa that says that there's a din derabanan? Balabatim in the room, we might have said, I'm malchus marjus. The Gemara doesn't. Huh? It's not what it means. So the Gemara says, Lo kasha, kan b'kiloi hakerem, where we're more strict when we're talking about things that are growing within a vineyard that they shouldn't be growing. There we're more strict. That's a din d'oraisa. Kan be'arkavas ilan, which is different. Kiddush Shmuel, the Amar Shmuel es chukosai tishmoru chukim shechakakti lecha kvar, the rules that I've already established for you. Behemtecha lo tarbia kilaim sadecha lo tizra. Your behema, you should not be marbia, or you shouldn't crossbreed animals. And sadcha as well, lo tizra, you also shouldn't plant your fields that way. And says the Gemara 2/3 of the way down, ma behemtecha beharva, just like by animals, you're not supposed to crossbreed animals. Av sadacha beharkava, the same exact thing is true in your field. Uma behemtecha noheg bein ba'aretz bein b'chutz la'aretz, and just like you're not allowed to be marbia behema, you're not allowed to do any harkavas behema even in America. Av sadacha, same din should be true. Noheg bein ba'aretz bein b'chutz la'aretz. So what we see over here is that you wanted to tell me that perhaps there's a difference between Kiloi HaKeren and Harkavas Ha'ilan. So we see over here that no, it applies in Chutz La'aretz too. Even Harkavas Ha'ilan applies in Chutz La'aretz also. The problem is that Sadcha, your field, is not, it's not Sadeh, it's a limiting word, Sadcha. Why does it say Sadcha instead of Sadeh? The Gemara says, no, that is Hahula Me'ute Zeroim Shebechutz La'aretz. There are certain types of seeds that you're allowed to co-plant, and that would not be considered Kilayim. Rav Chanan v'Rav Anan habu shakle v'azle b'orcha. They were walking on the path. Rav Anan and Rav Chanan. Chaz yuhu lehahu gaver the kazara zraim b'hadei adadin. In Chutz La'aretz, he saw that he had these two different kinds of seeds in his hands, and he was throwing it into the ground. Amar le nesi mar nishmate. We should put this guy into cherem. He's not from. He's breaking halacha. Halavai. We should be so stark as a people. You know, we had some meetings just now in Florida. And the room was up in arms. Why don't we create, with the OU's help, create a set of policies around Kiddush clubs to do a massive campaign around Kiddush clubs? Why are we not putting our foot down? This guy is upset about Kilayim. We should be pretty upset about the things that happen in our shuls broadly, not just our shul, but yes, our shul, but all of our shuls. It's unacceptable. It's terrible chinuch. And the research point that we were hovering on is that there is a risk factor in raising children where parents show favorability towards something, just favorability. What that means is that my openness to say that drinking isn't a big deal, even if I don't drink, is a risk factor for my kids to drink.
Meaning the rest of us implicitly are doing the same thing.
Correct.
Without attention.
So we're showing favorability to alcohol by not being a kanoi about Kiddush Club. So the room said to me, they're like, you work at the O, you go figure it out. I'm like, be my partners and I'll do it with you. I'm not doing all the work, but I'll help you.
Battle.
It's an uphill battle, but the research is terrifying, actually. The Yeshiva League under Machon Siach from SAR, they did a study on the Orthodox Jewish community. They did a study in 2019, 2020, and again in 2023. And Orthodox 12th graders binge drink more than their secular counterparts by double. Yep, by double. Secular Americans who are 12th graders binge drink 10% of 12th graders. We're close to 20%. So Hashem Yirachem. Wow. And one of the people I was co-teaching with in the room was a Goy D'Oraisa from like the coast of Maine. What a chilul Hashem. I flipped over into as much English as I could muster. I'm like, Kiddush Club, Chasanas. That's our fault. That's our fault as a community. That's our achrayus. So this guy is upset about someone throwing a couple kilaim seeds. We should respond bikanos like he responds bikanos. So as Rabbi
said, he wants to put him in chayr. Upset. It's like this is real.
Yeah, it's a real deal, and it's one Isser and Chumash. It's not. So, but I was saying, I'm just saying, there's a lot of Isuri Deraisa. Put him in Chayrim if he wanted to, but as Rabbi said back to him, Rabbi Shtickle Amma Aretz Amarle Lo Chivrisu. What you're saying is not correct. This because you don't know the halacha, because it's Chutz La'aretz, and Chutz La'aretz, these types of seeds are not problematic to plant. Besuchaziu lahu gabra the cause zora chite v'sare begufni. He saw another person who was planting wheat seeds, wheat kernels and barley kernels, begufni, within a geffen, within a grapevine, and there too, Amarle Nesi Mar Nishmate, we should put this guy into chayrim. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Amarle Lo Tzaharisu, things are not bright for you, meaning not that you're not bright like the light, like Sahara, like the brightness. Like there, you don't have the halacha clear. It's not correct. And chutz la'aretz, the halachos are different. Lo kaimalan Rav Yoshia, don't we hold like Rav Yoshia? The Amar Ad Sheizrachitu Usor v'chartzan b'mapolas yad. And the way that the halacha seems to have developed and evolved throughout the Amoraim is that the only time you violate the Isra and Chutz La'aretz is when you have chita, seora, and chartzan, and a seed from a grape in your hand, and you plant all three of them b'chad shachir. That's when you've really done something wrong, even in America. Rav Yosef me'arve bizrani bizarre, he would mix up certain seeds and plant them, no problem. Amar le'abai, but it's none. How can you do that? So he said, Amarle, lo kasha, kan b'kilei kerem, kan b'kilei zraim. There's different. The kerem is the one that's very problematic, but with the zraim, it isn't problematic. Kilei kerem diba aretz. Why are we more strict by kilei kerem? Because kilei hakerem diba aretz asurim behanot. In Eretz Yisrael, if a person violates the halachos of kilei hakerem, so the din is that there's an isur hana. So therefore, b'chutz la'aretz nami gazru b'hu rabbanan. So we're more strict in chutz la'aretz as it relates to Kilei HaKerem, because Kilei HaKerem in Eretz Yisrael has an Isser Hana, so we're makbid even in Chutz La'aretz. Ma'ashein came 5 lines from the bottom, Kilei Zerayim Deba Aretz, Lo Isuri Hana. If there was Kilei Zerayim, you mixed up seeds incorrectly, halachically incorrectly in Eretz Yisrael, there's no Isser Hana, then there's no Gzer, B'chutz La'aretz Nami Lo Gazru B'hu Rabban. Hadar Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef wanted to recant a little bit of what he had initially taught. Lav milsehi da amre. That's something that we have learned is not true. We'll see in a moment what that is. To Rav Yamora Zora Ginta de Rav. He planted a garden for the Bnei Yeshiva. Mishare. He planted them in patches. Why would Rav plant them in patches? Maybe it was that he was worried he was in Bavel, right? So maybe they were worried about Kilayim, which they shouldn't be, because we've just been learning that kilayim and chutz la'aretz is not a big deal. So says the Gemara, la mishum eruve kilayim. Wasn't it just a concern that maybe in chutz la'aretz Rav was of the opinion that we have a concern about kilayim and chutz la'aretz? Amar le'abaye, no. Bishsama, I could understand yashmu inan if what was being taught in this case of Rav is arba al arba ruchos ha'aruga v'achas be'emtza shapir. If the way that Rav planted the field was that in each of the 4 corners he planted 4 different kinds of zraim, and in the middle he planted one that was kind of neutral, so that there was no Isser Kilayim that's established. Shapir, I understand. But who says that that's what happened? After all, Elahachi Mishum Noi, maybe he did it because he liked the pattern. He's got a little OCD, he's a type A personality. He likes to see the patterns and the planting. So he does this type of grain over here and this one in the next box. Lav Dafka, that he planted it in a way that was to avoid Kilayim. We don't know that that's what Rav meant. Maybe because he wanted it to be easier for his workers. Just do all of the seeds in one spot for all the wheat, and then do all of the seeds in one spot for all the barley, and then fine, maybe, but nothing, lav dafka. So we're not poskim, but if we were, it seems from our Gemara that there's no concern about kiloi hakerem in regards to chutz laaretz. I'm sorry, no concern about kiloi zraim in chutz laaretz. Masha enkem by kiloi hakerem, we do have some concerns because in Eretz Yisrael it would be an iser hana. That brings us to the next Mishnah, which is mamish out of left field. It's completely unrelated and beautiful. Any person who does one mitzvah, that we do, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does good for him, and he lengthens his days, and he inherits the land. Anyone who doesn't do one particular mitzvah, very good. So says the Gemara, that's a problem. We're on Daf Lamed Testament Bays, 7 lines down at the open of the Gemara. We're Minhi, we have a brisa that does not seem to say this way. There are things that people eat the fruits in this world. Familiar from Birchos HaTorah in the morning. And the keren, the principle, the reward is in the next world. And we're missing some here, as you might be familiar with, but we'll read it as we have it. Over there, it's not mitzvah achas, it's these specific mitzvos which bring you to the next world. So maybe the other ones are not mitivin lo. Maybe our Mishnah, maybe we have a stira. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Hachi Kamar. Really, here's the right way to understand it. If a person does one mitzvah beyond the zechuyos that he had already earned, then mitivin lo v'doma kimisha mekayim kol hatorah. That's when our Mishnah kicks in. So it's after you do. If you do one of these beautiful things after you already have your zechuyos in place, then fine. Michlal, says the Gemara, what's implied? Dehanach, that the brisa of Eluhen kibud avayim v'chule, all of those, is afilu b'chadanami. Seemingly that brisa would be any one of those things separate of our Mishnah. Rav Shmaya lomar she'im hayasa shkula machras, that if we had people who were 50-50, and then we would say v'chol osem mitzvah achas riser al zechuyosav mitivin. So let's say I'm 50-50. Yeah, for this week. We're Bainan.
Yeah.
I know, I was sitting on the airplane learning this. I'm like, this is good timing. This is Nashika, yeah. Says the Gemara, wait 1 second, or Minhu, we're a third of the way down. That if you have a person whose zechuyos are greater than their avonos, we don't say positive things like our Mishnah did. We say negative things. Mirian lo, we make this world harder for them so that the reward in the next world is better. Mirian lo, v'dome kimisha sarav kol haTorah kula. We give this person a hard life here. It's as if they burn the Torah by doing any averas. Namely, we want to punish you for your averas here so that your next world is sweeter. It's as if you burn the whole Torah. And in this world, whenever people are avaryanim, mitivin lo v'doma kimisha kiyim kol haTorah kula v'lo chisros achas mimeno. So this brayso says the opposite. Our Mishnah says if you do a mitzvah, we're mitivin. This brayso says if your zechuyos are greater, then we're marian. So that's total opposites. Says the Gemara, Amar Abaye, Masnisen de'avden le yom tav v'yom bish. Says the Gemara, your good days and your bad days. What does this mean? It means kind of like I've already shared, which is that we're going to make your bad days today so your good days are later. And if you're a Russia, again, that wasn't the parameter, but if you don't do the mitzvah achas, then we're going to make this world is going to be good and the next world will be bad. Now, nobody wants Yisurim. We don't want these bad things. And there's discussions. It's impossible to avoid Yisurim altogether in a theoretical. These are discussions in the Maharal, the Chule. But the point of our Gemara over here is that the answer of our Gemara is Yom Tava v'Yom Bish, is that we look at this world in the following way. Yes, there are going to be challenges in this world, and they're not all roses, but those challenges are mitivin for us in the long run. Rava Amar, halfway down Hamani, who is the author of this idea of Yom Tav Yom Bish, says the Gemara, Rabbi Yaakov Hida Amar Schar Mitzvah B'Hai Al Maleka. There's no such thing. You can't get rewards here. Titania, Rabbi Yaakov Omer, Ein l'chal kol mitzvah sheksuva b'Torah. There's no mitzvah that is written in the Torah, Shematan Schar B'Tzida, when the Torah speaks about the reward explicitly, She'ein Tchias Hamesim Tluya, a very important Gemara. Listen to this line. That means that every time that the Torah tells us what the reward is, it's connected to Tchias Hamesim. What are those mitzvos? The Kibud Ava'im. There, what does it say? Ksiv, L'man ya'arichun yamecha u'leman yitavlach. So that means that the mitzvah of Kibud Ava'im is tied to Tchias HaMesim. And continuing, B'shiluach HaKan Ksiv as well, L'man yitavlach v'arach yamim. So there, what do we see? We see that these are examples of things that are matan schar b'tzida, and they're connected to what? To Tchias HaMesim. Why? Schar mitzvah b'hayal maleka. The reward is in Tchias HaMesim. It's not in this world. But if a person's makbid on Kibud Ava'im and Shiluach HaKan, then they're seemingly a little hard to read this into the Gemara, but it seems that Tchias HaMesim is the result for that person. We'll learn about this in a second. The Gemara is going to touch on this. So it says the Gemara 2/3 of the way down. Haresha Amar Lo Aviv Ale Lebira V'Haveli Gozlos. Let's say a father says to a child, "Please go up to the top of this particular place and go get me some birds. I want you to do shiluach hakan." V'Ala Lebira, the child goes up. V'Shalach Esaim, and the child performs the mitzvah of shiluach hakan. V'Notel Esabanim, and he takes the eggs. V'Chaziraso Nafal V'Meis. Rachmana Litzlan. Father sends a child to go do a mitzvah. On the way back, the child dies. Heichan tovas yamav shelzeh, v'heichan arichus yamav shelzeh. This is Stan's question, which is, what are you talking about? That's not arichus yamim. When a child dies, it's not arichus yamim. So it says the Gemara, ela leman yitavlach la'olam shekulo tov, v'leman yarichun yamecha la'olam shekulo aruch. So that means that when the Torah guarantees us arichus yamim, the arichus yamim is not for olam hazeh. It's for the next world. We would hope for both, because we want to chaparayim. The longer we're alive, the more mitzvahs we can do. The more mitzvahs we do, the higher levels we can. What?
Yeah, because both mitzvahs are a connection to Hashem, and Hashem is olam haba. You're building your own haba by connecting at least these two mitzvahs.
Right. And they're right. The psukim don't. The psukim just talk about the reward, matan schar b'tzida. Just talk about the reward of arichus yamim and leman yitavlach. Right. So that. What does it mean, yitavlach, leman yitavlach? So that's what the Gemara is saying to Stan's question, is that we're talking about the next world. So says the Gemara, v'dilma lav hachihava. Maybe that story really wasn't true and it was just made up. Says the Gemara, that's not correct. Rabbi Yaakov Maseches. Rabbi Yaakov knew about this. Okay, but maybe the child did something wrong to die. V'dilma meharher be'avera hava. Perhaps a person was meharher be'avera. So says the Gemara, an extremely important idea, because our thoughts run on their own, basically, because we don't have a lot of control of our brain, just because we're busy and distracted. Parenthetically, Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan says that one of the first things to do in meditation is to capture your stream of thinking and start to control it. Just an interesting space to start. Like your brain is in a rabbit hole, you pause. No, I'm stopping here, and I'm going to choose the next thing I think about. He talks about this in Jewish meditation. Anyways, not for now. Perhaps this child who died was mahar be'avera. The Gemara responds, that's not possible. Machshava ra, just because a person has a bad thought, Eina Kadosh Baruch Hu mitzarfa l'maisa. Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't make that into a maisa because you had a machshava. Now, there are halachic parameters to this. Sometimes the machshava is the isser, maskim, I agree, but that's not a machshava ra that we're talking about. We're talking about, I have a machshava to do an isser. Kadosh Baruch Hu is not mitzarfa l'maisa. That's good for us to know now. Perhaps this child who died was mahar be'avodas kochavim. Says the Gemara, even in their heart. So says the Gemara, that's not what that means. If you think there is reward in this world, then we should be able to have machshavos tovos that can offset the machshavos of here. Says the Gemara, we have a bigger problem with this whole sugya, which is that the child was doing what his parent asked him to do. So what about shluchei mitzvah? This is Maseches Psachim early on, as we learned many moons ago. So it says the Gemara, yeah, but Hasam Halichas and shiny, that's on the way to the mitzvah. That's one thing, but not on the way back. Says the Gemara, that's not true. That really we should be protected by doing a mitzvah in both directions. So if my father asks me to do a mitzvah, I should be protected both on the way there and on the way home. Says the Gemara, this case was different because it could be that Sulam Ra'ua Hava. Maybe the ladder was broken and he didn't take proper care to check that the ladder wasn't broken. The Kvia Hezeka. Now we're getting into some other Lamdasha ideas where the Hezek was Kavua. You should check the ladder. You don't climb ladders if you don't have some knowledge that the ladder is safe. That's not a good idea. So this is a fascinating line. Whenever there's a Kvius of Hezek, so the Gemara says we're not somech on a nes. What does that show you, by the way, about Shluchei Mitzvah Einu Nizaken? It's a nes. That's what the Gemara implies. It has to be that it's a nes, because ein somchen ala nes if it's a kviya hezeka. This is a famous story of Shmuel and Shaul. Fine. Amar Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef says, "El malei drashe acher lahaikra k'Rav Yaakov bar Barate lo chata." Had the acher Elisha ben Avuya learned these psukim a little bit differently, he would never have gone off the derech. The acher ma'ihava, what was his case? He saw this scenario that, let's just call it unfair, where the child was asked to do something by his father and the child died and on the return, and he felt it was unfair. He saw the tongue of Chutzpis HaMetorgaman was a big tzaddik, and he chazed to have a garter laid davar acher, a pig was dragging it through the streets. Amar pe shehifik margolios yelachech afar. So what do you mean? This beautiful tongue that only spoke Torah, that was righteous, it's now being dragged through the mud by a chazar. It's not zu Torah v'zu schara. It's not right. And nafak chata. And then he went out and he went off the derech.
They have the more the missing machine. They actually good for the mace. So it's like
no one's saying Acher is right. We're just saying that this is what set him off. Of course, he's not right because the Kodesh Baruch Hu is kulo chesed. We're people. We just don't get to see these things. Yeah. Oh, Acher?
No.
Oh. Yeah, I think that's probably the only reason why I actually know his name.
Get back to me in a couple of days.
I will. I think I read that one, don't I? Who's the chazan again? All right, we're gonna stop right here. In regards to the next couple of days, I won't have a choice but to give a shiur tomorrow. I have no idea. Probably after probably Slichos tomorrow. So yeah. I don't know. I'll text later tonight.
The late menu, the early menu ends a little late. It starts early. First year.
Yeah. All right. I'll text later, and if I can't work it out, I'll record and post. I hope that's not the case. But Amir Hashem, I'll text tonight. Wishing you all a beautiful night.